Welcome to the Happy Mama Movement podcast. I'm Amy Taylor-Kabbaz, mama, journalist, coach, and founder of Mama Rising. This podcast is a space of community and collaboration. We gather stories of matrescence, motherhood, womanhood, and change told by our Mama Rising coaches and mothers around the globe, in the knowing that through our stories, we can begin to heal and change the way the world sees, values, and supports mothers everywhere. So, welcome to the Happy Mama Movement. Welcome back, everyone. Today, I speak with a beautiful Mama Rising coach and facilitator and mama of three, originally born in Zimbabwe but now based in Western Australia, and who has spent most of her life in the very masculine corporate world of finance and accounting. And through the process of motherhood and matrescence, really went on a big self-discovery journey, as so many of us tend to do, looking at who she is, how she's made the decisions of who she is throughout her life, and how she wants to now share that with others. The thing I love the most about this interview is Vicky is really talking to all of us about owning who we are. Whether we are a career-driven, ambitious woman, or we want to be a stay-at-home mum, or somewhere in between, instead of putting us all into one big category and therefore feeling like we're failing in some way, we need to start acknowledging that each and every one of us needs to accept who we are in this season of motherhood and matrescence, and then support ourselves and each other to be that best version of ourselves. I loved this interview and seeing how now Vicky is taking everything she's learned and sharing it with everybody else around us. Enjoy. Beautiful Vicky. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to be welcoming you into this podcast finally.
Thanks, Amy. I'm really excited to be here.
As always, I always think to myself, when did we first come into each other's world? I don't remember how long it has been since you first stepped into my programs, into my world, but I know it's been a while and we've been on quite a journey together, really witnessing you process your own experience of motherhood and matrescence, and then watch this passion ignite in you to share this with women around you and the process that has been. But share with us what your experience of becoming a mother has been and when you first realised what matrescence was.
Thanks, Amy. So I have three children who are now 14, 10, and 7. And for me, it took a long time for me to understand that identity shift that we go through when we become a mother. And so I actually only came across you, Amy, in 2019. And I actually hadn't done any of your programs. I jumped straight into the Mama Rising coaching and facilitating training.
Oh, wow. Gee, it feels like it's been a lot longer than that.
Yeah. I heard your podcast with Lisa Corduff because I was doing a lot of work with Lisa.
Oh, yes.
And it was just this light bulb moment of going, oh, my God. Like, yes, this is exactly what I've been feeling. And I just couldn't articulate it. So, so for me, I'm an accountant, so very much sort of pretty male-dominated world. And I became an accountant because I thought it was a good, solid career to have. But fundamentally, it was this sort of inner independence of I never, ever want to have to rely on a man financially.
Wow.
Bearing in mind, I married my high school sweetheart and we are still happily married. But as I've reflected through my sort of understanding of matrescence, it was, I guess, around a lot of the messaging I heard growing up, a lot of what I saw, where I saw growing up in Zimbabwe, I saw a really big power imbalance between men and women because of what they earned.
Mm.
And so that was the real drive for me to become an accountant, which I guess having been an accountant for 20 years and having, reflected on my journey, I've been successful. But actually, as I start to understand myself more, I've realized I'm a really creative person. And the black and white world of accounting isn't always that creative.
Exactly. So do you see, when you think back to those messages and programs that you received in Zimbabwe growing up, not only that, such clear power imbalance based on income and independence, but also around men and women, mothers and fathers. I'm sure you can see so much more now. But before you became a mother, when you were a newlywed, stepping into this world, what were some of the stories and stereotypes that you were carrying from the way that you were brought up and what you saw around you?
I guess in Zimbabwe, there was this narrative of why have children if you're not going to raise them yourself? Sort of implying if you worked, you weren't raising your children. And it wasn't even something I'd thought about, but it was clearly there in my subconscious.
So do you mean that mothers were meant to raise their children? Like a woman should not work if they're having children. If you want to work, then don't be a mother. Like that, black and white. I remember I've heard that along the way. Those why have children if you can't be there for them? Yeah, that's a very toxic story to hold.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also, I guess, growing up, I have an older brother, and I think I was in grade 3, and my family often talk about this, like a bit of a joke, saying, "Oh, do you remember how, my brother had gone through the same year with, grade 3 with the same teacher, and, he's, super intelligent, and she had said to my parents, 'Oh, Vicky will make a good wife one day.'" And it was something that we always joked about, and like, "Oh, but look how you've proved her wrong." But again, it was these sort of, subconscious things in my head that probably, drove me more to like, I attached so much of my own sense of self and my own value to what I achieved in my career.
It's almost like it's the reverse psychology. If all you think I'm going to do is be a wife and a mother, you watch me. I would have done that. That would have been very much my personality growing up. You think I'll make a good wife. Yeah. I'm now going to lead an accountancy firm.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, I was also, I had 3 cousins who were quite a bit younger than me, probably at least 10 years younger. And they were my first babies. Like, I loved them. I looked after them. They lost their dad at a really young age, my uncle. And, people always said to me, "Oh, you'll make such an amazing mum one day." And so there was both the I'm going to prove you wrong and all my value attached to my career, but then also I'm going to be really good at this motherhood thing. So it's
you loved it. So there was joy in that too.
Yeah, but when it actually came around, I really struggled. That first maternity leave, I struggled so much. I was so lonely, and so just confused about who I was now, and what we learn about in Mama Rising is that inner split of going, well, I was meant to be this amazing mum. And it's not like I adore this beautiful baby, but also, who am I now? And I just desperately want to get back to work because that's where I feel a sense of purpose, where I feel valued, all those things. And so what I did is I constantly looked, for that external validation. Am I doing this okay? Am I going okay? I specifically remember driving home from the hospital and my husband having to pull over the car because he was so emotional about this beautiful baby in the back of the car going, oh my God, this is our baby. And I remember just sitting there thinking, hang on, I studied for years to become an accountant. I don't have a qualification in mothering. How do I do this? And so I guess then over, probably a decade, I bought every, particularly that maternity leave, every mothering book there was, every parenting book, to get my qualification in mothering because I didn't trust my own, judgment.
And how did the story then of, if you can't be with your children or know how to be a mother, you shouldn't be a mother, how did that play out with that split within you of, I love being a mum, but I have no idea what my qualifications or how to do this. And also I miss that identity of going back to work. How did that play out over those years, that split within you? Because it really helps the other mamas who are in that right now to hear what that looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So for me, what it meant was, what we learn about in Mama Rising is that maternal wall. More women will hit the maternal wall before they hit the glass ceiling. For me, I felt like I built the maternal wall myself by hand. It's like I put up every barrier I could for myself. So prior to having children, I was in London. I was acting in the role of finance director at Hugo Boss. So not an unimportant role. Mm-hmm. And it was the second time I was acting in the role, and it was offered to me permanently. But I had just found out I was 9 weeks pregnant with my first child. And it was just a given. They were like, yeah, of course, Vicky's going to take it. She's been doing, And I was like, no, I'm too young. I haven't got experience. But in actual fact, I could not reconcile in my mind, how can I be a good mother and have a demanding career? And so what happened is I turned it down. I continued to act in the role. I went on maternity leave, came back. But I thought, well, in order to be a good mum, I should work part-time. So I went to 4 days a week, which is hardly part-time.
Especially not at that level.
And, so I went back to my sort of head of finance role. But, when you're in a leadership role, there's nobody there telling me I have to work full-time or I have to, But essentially what I did is I just took a 20% pay cut, but still often worked on my day off, never switched off, threw myself into more because I needed to prove my value. I needed to know in myself that I was still good at my career.
And also I would say you also still wanted to be a good mother, like in your own beautiful attempts at having it all, which is what we are told we can do. In your own way, that's what you were trying to do. You were trying to hold on to that identity and that really big part of your life that you loved at work, and also balance it at first just pregnant and then with a new baby, developing and understanding who you are in that role. I mean, so often we look back at it, don't we, Vicky, and think, oh, it's so clear to me now. I was just doing it this to try and keep that identity. But at the time, I feel like we're swimming upstream. We are just doing what we can to keep the things afloat, keep our career that we've worked so hard on afloat while we're still trying to figure out what the hell we're doing at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just, I wish so much that, I had known about matrescence, and it's so simply just putting language around what you're feeling. And for me, through the, more than a decade of personal development I've done since becoming a mum, I guess the key thing I've taken away is like, it's all about just knowing thyself, right? Like, what is it that I want? And what I want now, it might change. And I did know that I wasn't a stay-at-home mum. I was a better mum for working. And actually, what I've realized now through,
14 years.
Such a long time is that actually what I needed to do is I should have taken that demanding job and earned the money that I should have earned, which would have then meant I could outsource more. And so for me, one of the things I'm really passionate about is separating motherhood from the running of a home. And it's not to say that, that's beneath anyone or there's nothing, but it's about saying, well, my brain needs to be engaged. I love working and I love solving problems and helping people, but I can't do that and be a mother to my children, meeting their emotional needs, plus trying to run a home.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing where I think what so often happens is this is the reason we have this ridiculous gender pay gap, because women opt out because it gets too hard.
That's right. Yeah. And they're in that middle space where they're not earning enough to get the support they need, to pay for the support they need to feel like they're doing a good job at home and at work. And they're not opting in. So they either opt out completely or they just stay half in, half out and burn themselves out because they're trying to do both. So you have now a really powerful insight, I think, a really powerful way to look at the different almost categories. I'm not sure if that's how you would describe it, of mothers when it comes to work and career. Can you share that with us? Because when you shared it to me, I was like, oh, well, there you go. That's how we understand it.
Absolutely. So for me, I'm a person, I love to build connections. I love to chat. It drives my kids crazy when, in the school playground, they're like, Mum, can we just go? I'm like, oh, I just got to have a quick chat. I love, and I'm not a, how's the weather kind of person, straight into the deeper, meaningful stuff. And so I guess through all those conversations I've had over, the last 14 years, what I started to do, I was going, do you know what? There's real, I can categorize this, and maybe that's my accounting brain. So this is, I guess, by no means meant to take away from all the individual, the uniqueness that every mother has. But again, it was a way of sort of saying, if a mum can put words, understand where she's at, it then really helps to sort of forge that path forward. And so for me, I went, okay, so you've got your career-driven mum. So, it's very much around the career. Then you've got mums who just have a job and they're happy to have a job. It's there to pay the bills or maybe to suit their lifestyle. And then you have stay-at-home mums. And for me, the first thing was, do you know what? I need to get comfortable with the fact that I am a career-driven woman and I can still be a great mum.
Yeah. And I love that you've separated those four. There's the career-driven ones who really thrive and love what they're doing and they're here all in for that as much as they can be. Then there's the ones that do it because they have to financially, or, lifestyle, as you said, like it suits my family that I only do 2 days a week because of this, this, and this. And then the fourth one is the stay at home. And as well as I do, we somehow continue to put all of us in the one category and judge everyone in that group because we're not recognizing that they're very different values and needs and desires, and they change constantly, depends on what season of matrescence and motherhood and life you're in. But if we pull them out and see that they're very different experiences and needs, we get to, I guess, understand each other better, do you think, Vicky?
Absolutely. And, so for me, I have this, I always want to be inclusive of everybody. And in fact, sometimes in the corporate workspace, I feel a discomfort talking about matrescence because I'm like, well, it's not just about mothers, it's about fathers too. And I think that is part of the missing piece of the puzzle, right? Like
100%.
I can't go and be successful in my career if my partner or my husband doesn't have flexibility or, like it's a balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think starting to get comfortable with that, where you go, do you know what? If you're a stay-at-home mum, own it, love it. Like throughout those early years, I felt such guilt that I wasn't a stay-at-home mum. I was like, I probably don't need to work, but I want to work. And I felt such a huge amount of guilt about that. Yet the stay-at-home mums you talk to are like, oh, I just look after the kids, And I'm like, you're the goddamn CEO of your home.
Oh, I know. That's right. You have the biggest job of them all. And yet we do. We pit each other against each other, don't we?
But what I do see is that what often happens is, you have your first child, maybe second child. So with the stay-at-home mums, they get to that stage where all the kids are now in school and they go, oh, now what? And they don't want to return to the corporate workspace because it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. But then, and the cost of childcare, and it's probably not worth it. And if that's what they love doing, but then they've lost their sense of purpose when the kids are now, they're kind of going, oh, what do I do now? And so for me, I have this concept of, you've spoken a lot, Amy, about, women standing on the shoulders of other women. And one of the many ideas that I have is around creating that community where we can support each other. And so what I did, in my most recent role where I was earning, my true value, it meant that I could work full time again, but I could outsource more. But it was really hard to find the outsourcing. And, so what I spoke to, someone who's become a great friend of mine. And, she stays at home. She's like, I'm so bored now the kids are at school. And she's like the most organized person you've ever come across. And I was like, would you mind maybe coming and helping me get on top of my home? No fancy Marie Kondo, please. But just, I was drowning in my own home of just nothing had a home, nothing, and I constantly felt guilty, and I felt like my life was harder because, well, I don't know where all the school socks are, and I don't know where,
That's it.
And so what I did is I said, would you be willing to come and help me? And she's like, yeah, sure, of course. I'm like, but it will only be if I can pay you, and she'd said, oh, well, just, pay me this. And I was like, well, no, actually, because the value to me is so great, like the mental load it's taking off of me was incredible. And it was just another mum. Like she didn't have to go and set up a business. She didn't, And so it's like a lot of that outsourcing, that if you are career driven, but then you still want to have healthy, nutritious meals. You still need to reorganize your kids' cupboards because they've outgrown stuff.
That's right. Swap the summer clothes to the winter clothes and do all of the things.
Yeah,
yes.
And that's all stuff that takes time. And it automatically is a mum's job, apparently, because we were born with that ability.
Exactly. But Vicky, what I love about this, this is the beautiful micro result of that idea. But on a macro level, on a big level, I've really spent a lot of time researching and understanding the care economy lately and really looking at it, how if we are going to change the world in the way that it is structured and redistribute wealth and support families and women and the underprivileged in a different way, we have to look at those who care are usually underpaid, not paid at all, invisible, no long-term benefits, no long-term support, no superannuation retirement fund, anything like that. And we need to flip that, especially in a post-COVID world where we realise that teachers and nurses basically kept us alive and sane for 2 years. Yep. And so what I love about what you're saying, and doesn't surprise me because your background in economics and accounting, is that you're also acknowledging what that mum does for you in your home is so worth being paid for. What a mother does on a daily basis is a worthy job. And because you're able to pay her, that's changing the story around what's important to pay for as well. I know it's a big concept there, but for me, that's what gets me excited.
It's making that invisible work visible.
That's right. And it's making it paid and valued. So I love that idea.
And so, that concept, which I'm hoping to get off the ground is, you want it to be uber local. You want it to be, that sense of, woman supporting other woman from the perspective of another mum. There's going to be no judgment because I think a lot of the time women feel a real sense of, oh God, I wouldn't let anyone see the chaos in my house, and I remember joking with my friend saying, once you see like my house, like the real inside of my house, I'm not sure you want to be friends with me anymore.
Exactly. It's like, do you know that I haven't made a school lunch in 3 years? It's just not my thing anymore. But this comes down to this beautiful concept you're really passionate about as well, which is separating being a mother from running a home. It's separating this idea of a good mother is on top of this and does it all by herself from the act of the admin, the finance, the daily tasks of running a home.
Yep. And it's taken me so long to get to that realization where I've, brick by brick built that maternal wall myself because I couldn't outsource, A, because it was quite hard to find, but B, I considered it part of my job as a mother. And I'm 100%. Like, it doesn't need to be, but on the flip side, if you are a woman who just loves to do, beautiful home-cooked meals, amazing. But imagine if when you're making your home-cooked meal, you make an extra one and you get paid for that so that when the career-driven mum comes home, she picks up her meal on the way home. It's all uber local. Woman standing on the shoulders of other women.
Yes, let's do it. I've also heard this suggested for women who are, empty nesters now, and they're waiting for the grandchildren, and there ain't no grandchildren yet, and they're really wanting to be a part of that maternal community role of helping the next generation raise their children. And the suggestion that, you can hire a grandmother. I think this could be, once again, acknowledging this wisdom that is right next door with value, with time, obviously, but also really acknowledging what they are able to give to us as we struggle behind closed doors and our own. It's such a beautiful idea, Vicky.
And, that exact concept is where I started to think about this because this beautiful woman in my community had posted on the local Facebook page saying, kids have left home. She's got a business, but it kind of runs itself. And actually what she wants to do is give back. So, be that, mum, do you need me to come and look after your children? Do you need me to come and cook a meal, do some laundry? And, and she had spoken to me about how, she was a bit nervous about putting herself out there like that because, and she'd spoken to her husband about it to say, like, do you feel this is like beneath me? She's a successful woman. But she remembers when she had young children, she was, in the UK at the time, and how chaotic it was because she had a really demanding job. And so, she was saying she was worried about the stigma that it's like this kind of, beneath her. But she's like, that's what I want to do. And for me, it was about just making sure that you pay people the right amount. I ended up paying my friend double what she said. She, because I was like, it's not about, setting potentially a fixed fee, but it's going the value to me, like in terms of what I earn an hour versus what this takes off my mental load. I want to give that value back to you.
Oh, exactly. It's priceless. So finally, in the process of you fully accepting this as who you are, fully accepting yourself in this way, that you need that stimulation, you're a big project person, you need that outside of the house, and it still makes you a good mother in perhaps a different way than you expected, but you can still see that now. What would you say to someone who's listening, who is currently in that push and pull of, I want to be there and I miss that part of myself and I feel like I would be a better mother having that part of myself fulfilled, but I also struggle with the fact that I don't know where the school socks are or none of them match on a Monday morning. And I miss that book week report again and all the things that we judge ourselves on as mothers. Like, how do we accept which version of this we are, whether we're the ambitious ones, the working because we have to, working for lifestyle or stay-at-home mum? How do we finally accept who we are in this, do you think?
I think there's two key things that I would say are really important. So the first one, knowing who you are, it's so difficult to when you don't understand that identity shift you go through. So your whole sense of self is off and you're like, I don't even know. And, these days with social media, like there's just so much outside influence. So for me, number one is actually understanding your own values. Now, again, that feels like words a lot of the time. And it was actually through one of Lisa Corduff's programs where she did this values exercise. And it was so simple, yet so profound. And it was, go and look up Lisa Corduff because she's absolutely amazing. I think all of these are available to buy as bite-sized little products. But it was about, think about a time in your life where you felt the most happy you felt. And then it's like, what were those feelings? And, she basically had a list of all these values. So you could actually go and pick them off there. And then, sort of ended up, and I think her program's now called The Change Room. But you could then start to articulate what's important to you, because I think that's the hardest part, where there's so much outside influence, there's so much social pressure that can really just cloud who you think you are.
Exactly.
So I'd say that's sort of number one. The other one as well, which I found so helpful, was using a tool to actually understand what your strengths are. So I think so often when women leave the workforce for maternity leave and then they go back, they've lost interest in that job potentially, right? And they're like, I just feel like, there's so many bigger things in the world to solve,
Yes.
That's why we need more women in the workplace to solve all the ESG issues that we have in this world. Like, the women are the ones who are going to solve these when we can, have more women working again. the ones that want to and really sort of tapping into their potential and their true strengths. So for me, a tool that I highly recommend is Clifton Strengths Assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Australia, it probably costs about $90 to do it. But what it does is it then you answer a variety of questions. You've got 20 seconds to answer each question. So it's got to be your immediate response, not what should my response be?
Yes.
And what it comes back with is, what your strengths are, and it categorizes them. I'm a big fan of all the categorization.
Mm-hmm.
I like to put things into boxes. But for me, that really, really helped me to understand why I loved some things, but also why I didn't love some things. And it actually led me to, go through a diagnosis process for ADHD.
Wow.
And, at 42 years old or 41 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And it explains so much, so many of the things I had found really challenging, particularly in motherhood, around keeping up with things in the home and doing a meal plan. And, in my mind, they were quite boring. So I just couldn't,
And so would you recommend that mamas do that? Because some women may be listening who have done those strength-based, exercises or feel like they understand themselves, in their 20s. Do you think that we should kind of almost assume we know nothing about ourselves anymore when we first enter motherhood and redo those things? Because I feel like my answers in my 20s would be very, very different now. And again, there's this assumption that we don't change through our lifetime. We don't evolve and become passionate about different things. Or do you feel like there's an opportunity for us in this time that we're in of motherhood and matrescence to go back and with a blank slate and ask ourselves these questions again?
100%. That's where I am right now, Amy.
Me too.
I guess I've hit midlife, and I think it might have been Lisa who's like, "This is not a midlife crisis. This is a midlife awakening."
Yes.
And I really feel that. Like for the first time in my life, I'm sort of going, "Who is Vicky Wren?
Yes.
Who is she?" Because I think even prior to motherhood, right? Particularly in the sort of era that we grew up in, it was women can go out and have careers, and you should go and but also then don't whinge about motherhood. You've been given everything you want.
That's it, exactly. And it goes back to that thing you said right at the beginning. If you're whinging about motherhood, don't have children. We couldn't claim either side. I love this so much. I think what you've really shown me and everyone who's listening, that there is this internal story that we carry that is here to be questioned. And the story may come from where you grew up, the people around you, who you thought you were, what your strengths were, how you should be as a mother, how you should be as a career woman. And until we can kind of recognize how we've built that for ourselves and the world around us has built it for us, we won't ever be able to break through it. And when you break through it, there's this moment of realizing and accepting this is who I am. I am a career-driven woman, and it means this as a mother and a wife. Or I am not, and I don't care about that stuff, and I don't want it to be my life. And that's what this means to be a mother and a wife and a woman. There's a level of ownership in your story that I really love.
Thanks, Amy. I do think that, the complexities that come with parenting, particularly in this era that we're living in, where there's, so much, I guess, stress on our poor young children, right? For me, I almost hid behind my career for so long. And I think I could have, if I hadn't had children, I would have just carried on, being this super independent person and, trying to climb to the top of that corporate ladder. But actually, I guess the gift of motherhood, which genuinely does not feel like it at the time. So if you're there, just understand.
It will feel like a gift one day.
The hardest times that you face as a mother are those ones that are actually cracking open a lot of that who you really are inside, as opposed to living to the social conditioning.
That's it. Amazing. Oh, Vicky, it is such a joy to bring your voice to this community of mamas around the world and to hear how this has evolved for you. I'm so excited to share this with everybody. We will pop in the show notes the details of a chapter in a book that has been published and where people can connect with you and reach out and learn more about what you're doing in this world. So thank you so much, beautiful, for all that you do and all that you are.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for being that shining light. I don't know where I would be without what you have taught me, what Lisa's taught me. Just the most incredible woman. So thank you.
Thank you, beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody. You can find out more about the book that Vicky is a part of in the show notes, as well as how to connect with her and what she is doing now for mothers. And also remember that our intake and enrolment for Mama Rising happens twice a year. We start training in March and September. And if you are interested in hearing about the next intake of Mama Rising, just go to mamarising.net. Also, right there at mamarising.net, you will find Vicky and so many of our other amazing facilitators and coaches around the world who can work with you and support you to find your own strengths, your own version of motherhood and womanhood, so you can fully own it. Until next week, thanks for being here. Thanks, as always, for being a part of our global Matrescence community. Please take a moment and make sure you're subscribed to this podcast in your podcast player so you can always be notified of our next episode. And if you would like to work with a coach on your own experience of matrescence, please go to mamarising.net and explore our directory of phenomenal coaches, workshop leaders, space holders and facilitators around the globe. You can also explore our Global Matrescence Foundation and consider donating so a mama in need can access the support of one of our coaches and still ensure that our coaches receive the income and support they need so they can continue to work in this way. And finally, if you would like to be a coach, a facilitator and a matrescence activist in your own community, jump on our waitlist for our next intake of the Mama Rising Facilitator training at mamarising.net. Thank you for being here and being part of this movement. Until next week, bye.